My name is Max Buschini, and I haven't made an Oscar award-winning climbing film yet.
One, two, three.
Hello, welcome to...
We're doing the We're Indie Not.
Hello, welcome to Indie Not Film. Oh, wait, this show is called Haven't Made It Yet.
This is... And we're doing a podcast.
Hayden
Haven't made it yet. No, wait, you already said that. This is Indie Not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Yannick Ehret.
And we're interviewing a truly phenomenal guest today.
Very different than our usual thing.
Different in a good way.
In a good way. He poops in bags. He
poops in bags in a good way.
He poops in bags. He hikes 20 miles a day sometimes for his job. He knows his way around ropes and cameras. He is a documentarian rock climber. I was doing so well. I was doing so good.
You almost got it.
I had such a... He makes rock climbing documentaries.
Yeah. What's his name, Yannick?
His name is Max Buschini.
Really, it's the good stuff.
You'll hear soon about it.
Soon about it.
You have to click 6 links to get to the actual episode. Separate uploads.
Was that good?
That's great.
What I visualize of making it, I mean, it's really hard to say because making it is just something you've created in your head, right? When you make it, you never really know. There's no definition. Like, I don't know, maybe I have made it. I have no idea. But I guess like in my head, what making it means, yeah, I think it's just like having, I guess, constant work, really, like making it like have constant work. Like, I think, yeah, that's like the hard part of freelance is like, you know, just like the ups and downs, and like you do a gig or do a job and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, what's the next job? Mm-hmm. And I think making it really would just be like, in my eyes, is once like the outside world, like that's outside of climbing and adventure filmmaking, yeah, like is like privy to your work, like, or like, you know, they praise your work, or a production company like Netflix or whoever that's not climbing related, like wants you for the job. I think that's like when you really realize you've made it. It's like breaking into that, like, I guess the real world.
Yeah.
Transcending the niche. Yeah.
Yeah, transcend the niche. That's a great way of putting it. I think when you transcend the niche of just the climbing world, that's like maybe when you make it, in my eyes.
I think it'd be good just to establish that we all three went to the same school in Oregon, University of Oregon, and we all studied film. And then most people went down to Los Angeles to do their film thing, or New York, and some of them Portland. And Max just kind of disappeared into the woods. And and then Max and I just didn't, talk that often after we kind of went into the work world. And then maybe like a year or so later, I just start seeing these crazy climbing pictures populate Max's Instagram of him hanging like 2,000 feet in the air, or like stars of the rock climbing world being like shot in these crazy angles from above, and all these videos. And yeah, Max has just taken a very unique way into the documentary world, doing something now that I think very few people can do, which is in filming, and any documentary, any sort of film project is logistically and in all ways very difficult. But Max has added a layer of difficulty, which is like impending death, pretty much. I mean, not impending because you're using safety gear and all that, but it feels like you're close to death, and just adding a whole nother layer to the entire beast. So definitely a very special guest, and I'm excited to hear the logistics and just the whole thing of how you make the stuff that you make, because it's crazy.
Yeah. So Max, maybe go into what you do in your own words.
I'm basically a big wall climbing cinematographer and documentary film director in the climbing world, mostly like the outdoor industry, I'd say.
And how long have you been climbing?
I've started climbing probably like 10 years, I think 10 years ago now. So for a full decade. I started in 2013. I actually saw a film that got me into climbing.
Oh, cool.
And
what film?
I saw a film called 180 Degrees South.
Oh, I gotta see that one.
Have you guys seen that film?
No, have you seen it?
No.
No, it's a cool film because, you know, my friend, I was into backpacking. My friend's like, oh, there's backpacking in it. And in Patagonia. And I was like, whoa, that sounds awesome. And then I didn't know it like went to climbing or surfing. And, you know, before that, I kind of thought climbing was stupid. I was like, I don't want to go rock climbing. You know, it seems really dumb. I saw like pictures of, you know, someone like Wolfgang Gulick in like the pink like spandex or something. And I was like, oh, that looks ridiculous. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that. And I saw this film, and I grew up pretty close to Yosemite, but I never went to Yosemite. And they had footage of Yosemite in this film of these guys climbing on El Cap. And like the main character of the film, Jeff Johnson, he grew up like 2 towns away from me. So he like grew up in this town, Danville. I grew up in Walnut Creek. And then I see him like, you know, sleeping in a portal edge, like 2,000 feet off the ground. And I'm like, whoa, this guy who like basically came from the same place I did is now doing this crazy adventurous thing, like living this incredible life. And then it kind of gave me the realization and the confidence to be like, oh, if he can do it, like maybe I can too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I found this like local climbing gym near me. My buddy was, you know, working there, and he took me there, and, you know, it just totally blew my mind, and it was super fun. And, you know, it works muscles that you've never really worked before. So I just remember driving home, I could barely like grab the steering wheel because my forearms were so pumped. I'm like, oh my God.
I've been trying to get Hayden into climbing, going to the rock gym recently.
I don't know if the listeners can hear, but this is the sound of a noodle.
Just a bag of bones.
Which is my arm. It doesn't...
Floppy arm over there.
Floppy arms,
oh, no.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it is fun, but I can only handle about 30 minutes of climbing or so. But I can't imagine also having to worry about being behind a camera as I'm sore and not wanting to fall.
It's kind of a crazy experience. It's like, I remember because, well, basically I saw that film, and I was like, that film 100 Degrees South, and I was like, okay, I want to go to Yosemite. And so I started going to Yosemite and saw El Cap for my first time, and my mind was blown, right? Like, you know, you see El Cap for your first time. I know Yannick, I've been in Yosemite with Yannick, and like El Cap's crazy. It's huge. And I immediately felt inspired to just be up there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I want to be up there. I don't even need to climb it. Like, I just want to be on that cliff.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of more of just being in that space and like that ocean of granite. And so I kind of like realized like, oh, you can go up there and you can film up there. Cause like my whole life I've loved movies and stuff, and I wanted to become a filmmaker since I was a young kid. And I realized like you could put 2 and 2 together, and then I could just basically spend all the time up there and just with a camera. And, you know, you learn the safety techniques. I've learned the safety techniques for years before, and then like started applying them. And now actually it feels quite safe up there. In a lot of ways. Once you know what you're doing and understand all the systems and become confident, obviously you're always on the edge.
No, yeah.
That never goes away.
It's good to have that edge. Like, you kind of like, if you get too comfortable, then it's like not a good thing, you know? Because then you become complacent, and then that's when things go wrong. But like just having that little bit, like that edge is like good. But because, yeah, definitely
keeps you on your toes.
You do get really relieved at the end of shoots and stuff. But what were you saying?
So when you went to the rock gym for the first time, after seeing that movie, were you going in with the intention of like, hey, like I want to maybe make a movie like this, or were you just inspired by the climbing at this point?
I think at the beginning I was pretty just psyched on climbing. And I was like, I just want to go climb. And so I showed up to the gym and started climbing, and I was basically going all the time. But it was like not cheap to get a membership there. I remember like I couldn't afford it. My parents were like, we're not going to pay for like a $70 a month membership or whatever it was at the time. Like, no way. which now it's like almost $100.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
which is
it's
crazy.
gone up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. And my parents were like, no way. And so I was kind of like, oh, how do I climb here all the time? And my buddy would let me in for free, you know, who worked there, which was cool. But then I kind of realized like, oh, if I want to climb all the time, I should just work here. Yeah, so I went and approached the gym manager. His name was Hans Florine.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go. If you're a climber, you know that name because like he's basically like one of the most famous climbers in the world and happened to be the manager of this gym in Concord,
funny.
California. kind of super random. Yeah, and he's climbed El Cap more than any other person on the planet. He's climbed it like 170 times or something.
Wow.
So he's like the El Cap master. Because I basically like told my friend like, oh, I want to climb El Cap or I want to go up, just film on El Cap. And he's like, oh, you should talk to Hans. Like he would know. I was like, oh, has he climbed El Cap before?
Yeah, just a few
And
times.
my buddy's like, oh yeah, he's got the speed record on it. And I was like, and you know, I was like, what? And so I immediately went up to Hans. I don't know how I had the confidence at the time. I was like, and I think I was just like, oh yeah, the speed record on El Cap, huh? Or something. But then we started chatting and, you know, then he ended up hiring me at the gym and I worked for him for a few years. And then I ended up making my first real film about him.
Yeah, which you did in Eugene, right? At the columns, right? A familiar place to anybody that went to the University of Oregon or has ever been to Eugene.
Yeah, it was at the columns at Skinner's Butte. Yeah, the classic place to go in Eugene.
So usually we do tend to ask the origin story of you like wanting to go into film. It sounds like it could be similar to your origin story of climbing. Do they go hand in hand, you going into film and you going into climbing, or have you always been into film?
I feel like it's different because I kind of always been into film.
Yeah.
I think like I was like a little kid and wanted to be a filmmaker. Probably like, I mean, ever since I could remember, really. Probably since I was like 4 or 5. Because like my parents are big into movies and like, I guess like movie buffs and themselves. From an early age, like my brother and my brother also is into filmmaking and becoming a filmmaker himself. And so we were like really ingrained from a really young age.
When did it change from a hobby, something that you like to do, to like, oh, I can do this into climbing, I can make adventure documentaries? When did they go together?
It didn't go together until college.
Okay.
So like, because I actually transferred to University of Oregon. So I was only there for like 2.5 years. When I first started going to college, I was at a junior college in the Bay Area called Diablo Valley College, DVC. And then I was going to the climbing gym, which is right by DVC like all the time. And then I started kind of, you know, I realized I wanted to study film. It was kind of something I've always wanted to do. And, you know, everyone was like, you should go to USC, you should go to UCLA or like SF State. And like, those are the film schools to go to. And I was kind of like, yeah. Like, but I kind of wanted to get out of the Bay Area and out of California. And then also I realized like at that point, I was like watching like Real Rock movies, which are like the big climbing films. And I realized like, oh, you can do like climbing and filmmaking and put into one. And then I like realized at University of Oregon, they had a really good outdoor program there, like the Outdoor Pursuits program. And I was like, oh, I could just go, you know, learn all these things like vertical rescue and backcountry rescue and just get really ingrained in that. And then also do the film side of things. And so like, I basically like minored in outdoor like leadership training. Like it's technically not a minor at Oregon, but yeah, I got like a certificate.
You get a certificate of like a wilderness survival thing. I was in the process of doing those classes and I just wanted to graduate first and ended up not finishing. But I loved what was his name? Strong. It was Professor Strong.
Michael Strong.
Michael Strong, man. That's the guy you want to teach like wilderness survival.
Oh, that guy's a legend.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love Michael Strong. Yeah, because it was cool actually. Like I was filming Peter in the Columns in Eugene and actually got to go show up to Michael Strong's last wilderness survival class. I surprised him. He had like no idea I was there.
Nice.
I was like in the back, and he like there's a handful of us, but like he was like, "What are you doing here?" Yeah, he's a good man, super good man. Yeah. So I basically was taking that, and I was kind of like, okay, like I can apply these to filmmaking, and that's doing the outdoor pursuits program. It was like it was almost like training you or like to become a guide of sorts, like an outdoor guide. So I was kind of like, oh, maybe I'll try and see what that's like. And I did that for a summer, like guided in Yosemite, and kind of did like more, it was more of like a tour guiding job and like hiking guiding job. I didn't do climbing. I was kind of trying to stay away from the climbing guiding. And then I, basically realized like during that summer, like, okay, I just need to go full board into the climbing adventure filmmaking. Cause I think it just, to me, it felt really scary, like to make that jump. Cause it's like, it's not easy. You have to like put all of you into it and do a lot of free work. And I think it was like, oh, it's kind of scary to make that plunge.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is in the filmmaking world. And then I basically committed to it. And, once you commit, you're like, kind of like, all right, here we go.
Mm-hmm. You do have to make that jump. Like, I think there is like, it is good to have that balance of like having like a side job and then film, maybe doing some PA work or internships is good to start out. But like once you actually want to do it, you do have to kind of go all in and kind of be broke. And
it always comes with very little job security and a lot of like hard lessons. But that's just part of it. Yeah.
But when the task is having to pay like bills and rent, then there are actually stakes involved of, yes, you love this, you love filmmaking, you love climbing, but how am I going to make this pay rent at the end of the month as well? So like you'd start to learn creative ways pretty fast going into that. In regards to getting into climbing, as far as learning safety precautions and everything while you're behind a camera, did you do any practice climbs with a camera, like at a rock gym or anything to kind of get yourself comfortable recording while you're on the climb?
Yeah, I think I started at Oregon actually, like at the rock wall. I started like shooting just friends in the gym. I think I was in the documentary filmmaking class.
Oh, cool.
Oregon. They're like, oh, you like need to make a documentary film. I was like, okay, I'll do climbing.
Also
like,
a good
I'll
class. Love that. I forgot her name.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
But she's the only person that's actually doing shit. Like sometimes she would be like, oh yeah, she's not in this week. Like she's in Guatemala filming.
Oh, was that someone like one of the professors?
One of the professors in that class was like, she was just an absolute legend for documentary filmmaking. And I forget her name.
Oh man.
Which is,
I didn't have her from whatever class I did because I can't remember the exact course, but like that would have been amazing.
But digressing,
oh my God.
So you started, was it just like with your phone or you're actually using like a DSLR, something to shoot on?
I want to say, cause it was for a class, I think they like handed us like a camcorder, like one of those like Sony camcorders or something. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember the name of it, but yeah, that's what I was doing it on. Then I had like a one of those like small Sony point and shoots, and I started on that. I brought it to when we studied abroad in Ireland, Yannick. That's what I had. The little like it was like that little RX 100 or whatever the Sony makes,
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty sweet for a little point and shoot. It like takes really good photos and video, and I was like kind of messing around with that, and then. Then we were able to like rent out DSLRs at the university, and I started like getting the 70D that Canon made, or then a friend would have like a 5D, and I think we like rented out. We were able to rent out like a C200 or something. Yeah. Of that sort, and we're like, okay, that's like an actual cinema camera that we can use, and and, it's kind of started pushing. But I actually like look back, I wish I did more stuff when I was there because, we had all this equipment like kind of that we could rent and use. And I wish I practiced more and did more, but I was, climbing a lot and psyched on climbing.
Yeah.
I was like, I could practice or I could go rock climbing at Smith this weekend.
Yeah.
And just climb and not film. But yeah, I would go to Smith too and like Smith Rock and film as well. And
for people who don't know Smith Rock, it's if you've ever had a Cliff Bar, it's the rock on the Cliff Bar. That's Smith Rock. Very good climbing area.
Yes. Yeah. Chain reaction.
Yeah.
That was the climb on the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like a 512C.
So, okay. So when you made Columns, was that your first like solo led like project, that a documentary project on climbing that you did, right? Where did that, like a bigger thing that you put into festivals and stuff like that, where did that come from? Was that a product of you? I know you ended up living with Hans Florin and working in the Valley with him. Was that a product of that, or was that connected to your Eugene ties? Maybe get a little bit into that project.
I did the plunge. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be a climbing filmmaker. That's my goal. And I talked to Hans immediately. I was like, hey Hans, like it'd be awesome to do something with you, like make a film. And Hans he broke his legs really bad on El Cap. It was like a really terrible incident where he took a big fall and fell like 25, 30 feet to a ledge and then just shattered both his ankles and legs. And, he was, he's in his 50s at the time when he did it. And, for someone who's done El Cap more than anyone, having this really bad accident, like it shook a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember like Alex Honnold was even like shaken up about it. Tommy was shaken up. And so it's like, oh, that's like the real deal, right? And so, I mean, those guys are the biggest names in climbing. They're shaken. So kind of like, yeah, it was a big deal that happened. And I was kind of I wanted to make a film with him. And then I realized like, oh, he's going to try and do El Cap again. So kind of do like a redemption and come back after he's gone through this recovery. And then I went and filmed him on El Cap in 2018. And it was like the 60th anniversary of the first ascent of when Warren Harding did the first ascent of the nose on El Cap in 1958. So it was 60 years later. And I shot that, and it was 6 months after he broke like his ankles, shattered his ankles. And he ended up pretty much jugging the whole thing. So he kind of just like followed the whole route. But that was my first time ever filming on El Cap and wrapping off the edge of El Cap, like rappelling. When I say wrap, I mean rappelling off the edge of El Cap. Like, I hiked to the top and there was a rigger with me, fortunately. And I rappelled off for the first time, and you just all of a sudden see 3,000 feet below you for the first time. It's pretty unreal.
Yeah.
It's not like a gradual. It's just all of a sudden like, oh, that's 3,000 feet. Like
oh my
to
gosh.
the bottom. Like you go off your rope, you're gonna explode right on impact. And so it was definitely like really at first pretty frightening, but then as you get up there, we ran into like other climbers up there and they were super comfortable. And it was like all of a sudden like, oh, okay, like you can be comfortable up here and be confident. And then all of a sudden my confidence kind of was going up. But I remember like filming him coming up like those pitches. And then I started jugging out. And I remember being like, oh my God, this is so hard. And jugging is like ascending the ropes back to the top of the mountain. So basically, instead of climbing on the rock itself, I'm not actually climbing when I'm filming. I'm usually like ascending a rope. I have like these devices that I'm connected to called Jumars or ascenders. They're basically like tooth devices that like clasp on the rope. And then you can like basically slide them up the rope if you're moving your hand up, like pushing your hand up. And then you have like these nylon like ladders attached to them that you put your feet in. So you're like climbing the rope like a ladder, like up and down. Yeah, so I got to the top. I remember just being totally worked and like filming. I was like, oh my God, that was amazing. Then Hans, kind of let me know like, hey, like I'm actually working on this longer piece with a friend of mine named Andrew. He's like a producer in Salt Lake City. And he's like, I'll get you in touch with him. Maybe it's like a film like piece. And I was kind of just wanting to do a video. Honestly, like if I didn't hit up Andrew and just continue with my own little video, it probably would have been terrible and it probably would have sucked. But yeah, I hit up Andrew and he's like, yeah, I'm actually making this film about Hans and this guy from Eugene, Oregon named Peter Hoffmeister.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, he's like, yeah, have you ever heard of Eugene? Do you know what the columns are? And I was like, basically like, oh my God. It kind of felt like, it did kind of feel, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Like the universe was saying something, right? You're like, you could feel like the light coming down from the heavens, like, oh, and like, be like, this is your first film. Cause it just made sense. Like, oh yeah, Eugene, like that's a place I love, and like Yosemite, and kind of put the two together. And so, yeah, Pete and Hans were doing this race at the columns, like a 45-foot climbing cliff, but they were going to do like 60 plus laps in order to match the length of El Capitan, which is 3,000 feet. And they're going to like race each other. And Hans, is like, had the record for like 2 decades or more on El Cap. So on the route, the nose in particular. And so basically like Pete wanted to challenge like this living legend, but like Hans broke his ankle, so it kind of turned into like this recovery film of sorts. And Pete had an accident as well, and it was like a cool recovery piece. And that was like the first film, essentially. Yeah. Long story short.
Which I think the recovery angle of it actually kind of made it even more awesome. I mean, it's obviously terrible that that but like it added so much more emotion to it of him trying to, getting challenged right at that time and also recovering at the same time. And it was just for him to be able to do that, it added so much.
I think it's part of the story. Like I just saw Free Solo for the first time a couple weeks ago. And like the fact that like he twisted his ankle or something, like his ankle was completely beat up. Yeah. And in like 2 months' time, he was still going to free solo. Was it El Capitan that he did? Which one it was? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, but that's the climber. Climbing doesn't stop with injuries. Like he was just so he was so ready to get back on and climbing. I haven't met a climber that hasn't gotten an injury and is like, I'm done. It's like they're almost addicted to it.
I mean, that's sports. Yeah, every athlete has like an injury story. Mm-hmm. That's part of it. Do you think? I was excited to ask you this. Do you think that Free Solo being like a really mainstream version of a climbing film changed anything about the like climbing world or just the climbing documentary world, even from your perspective?
Oh yeah. In my perspective, it changed everything. It changed everything about like people going to Yosemite Valley, people starting to rock climb. Also the understanding of climbing, mm-hmm. I think got somewhat skewed in the general public.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think you see free solo now. That's all you think about is free soloing, like climbing without a rope. That's what most people think of when they think of climbing. Mm-hmm. When it's like he's like the 0.05% of like all climbers, and like 99.5% of all other climbers don't climb without a rope. Mm-hmm. And even probably like more than that. And so. Yeah, I think that's like the thing about the film. It did like kind of change some perspectives for the like general population or skewed, I should say. And then also, I mean, especially because it won the Oscar, like that changed everything. Like it blew up the climbing world because also like climbing media, it proved that a climbing film could win an Oscar.
Yeah.
That's huge. When that happened, I was like, oh, like you can win an Oscar if you make a good enough climbing film. But at the same time, like, I don't know if it could happen again because like, I don't know if anybody's going to free solo El Cap or anything crazy like that again. I kind of hope not. to be honest.
What's the kind of stories you want to tell? What do you hope someone can take away from watching one of your documentaries?
My work that I am really inspired to make it. Yeah, I think you kind of brought up about Peer in the Calm. It's not necessarily like I don't really want to tell a story that much about like, oh, this climb is really hard. Like, look at this person try really hard in this climb and pull hard, like on really small holds. Like for me, that's just not really inspirational. It's like really like what's within you, like the story of like happening about. Like I want to tell human stories while they're rock climbing.
Yeah.
Essentially. Like, that's why I wanted to tell Peer in the Calms, because it is a story of recovery that happens through climbing. Mm-hmm. But it's not just rock climbing, right? Because like rock climbing is an amazing sport. I love it. It's fun. But like, I think what drives these stories that we love is like, the struggles within, like not just the climbing itself. It's like what's happened. And I think the stories I want to tell is like, more about like the humans and that do rock climb and like, who are they? And when you watch a film of mine, I want you to kind of question like, oh, like, what inspires you to go do something like this? Or,
Yeah.
Like, but also I want you to be inspired, like be like, wow, I'm inspired. I want to go, go outside in the mountain, spend more time in the mountains and see what I can do out there and what I'm made of, essentially. That's definitely what I want people feeling. What are the emotions that drive us, essentially, in climbing to do what we do? Yeah. And I'm a pretty emotional person that definitely, I think it seems that comes out in my work.
I'm always thinking about how, like, in a way, like a climbing movie is like the perfect, or like Free Solo, for example, like the perfect setup for a documentary, because the stakes are so high. The stakes are death. And the goal is so clear up there. Like, we're here, right there. Like, like any good movie, if you can physically show the goal in like one shot, like that makes like a good scene or a good movie. And in my opinion, I think a lot of people would share that. But yeah, amazing stakes, amazing clarity on the goal. It's like the perfect setup for any documentary, like what you're always looking for. And then you can, of course, pepper in why would somebody want to do something this crazy and dig into the psychology of it. But like, I feel like a climbing movie was bound to win an Oscar because of that, just because of the setup. And just on Free Solo, I think it moved climbing definitely into the mainstream. Perhaps again, it kind of added to this wave of climbers, and I can see it at the Rock Gym. I feel like there's been definitely an uptick of people just here in LA at the Rock Gym, and I think it has brought all sorts of strange characters into the climbing world, which is kind of a segue to. Correct me if I'm wrong. You shot something with Jared Leto, right, in the valley.
I did.
Who I've actually seen, we identified by his tattoo while we were climbing in Malibu, him walking around in a climbing area. So he's definitely done climbing before. He's in the climbing community. So it's not crazy that he ended up showing up in Yosemite Valley. But if you could talk about that experience.
I can talk a little bit about it. I don't know how much legally I can.
Oh, okay. Always exciting.
But like I can talk about some things. I met him in Yosemite Valley in 2021. I think because I was living there for a year and a half. I think that was right after I moved out, and I was shooting with Tommy Caldwell, and I was doing a shoot with Tommy Caldwell, and Tommy just kind of nonchalantly was like, "Oh yeah, like tomorrow we're gonna be filming, and my buddy Jared's gonna come, like hang out with us."
Jared,
is that cool? Does that work out? And I'm kind of like, I was like, "Oh yeah, what like?" Who's your friend Jared? He's like, oh yeah, he's the actor Jared Leto. And I was like,
come on.
Oh, okay.
I like that he's saying the actor.
Jared, the actor.
Yeah.
He acts. He
kind
does.
of like, oh, yeah, the actor. Like, and Tommy, I don't know if any of you met Tommy before, but he's like so he's super mellow and kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. And he's like, yeah, Jared's gonna come hang out with us. And me down there, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so we're shooting at this spot in Yosemite called the Cookie Cliff. It's like a, smaller cliff, like a roadside cliff that you just park and walk up the hill. And yeah, we're up there, and then all of a sudden, like, some other people show up, and like Jared shows up with his assistants, and we just started hanging out. He started climbing with us. I was shooting with him somewhat, and then he just like kind of like looked at me and my camera, and he's like, hey, I'm actually trying to hire somebody.
Oh my God.
Like, are you like free like in the next like few days? And I was like, basically like, yeah, I'm free after this shoot.
Let me see. Jared Leto just asked me for a shoot. Yeah. I think I'm free.
Yeah, he was like super nonchalantly like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, he's like, yeah, I'd be into hiring you. Cause he's like, I'm shooting with Tommy. I guess he was just thought that was good enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, I shot with Tommy, like had like really these like huge days shooting with Tommy. He did like, huge link up in Yosemite, and I like probably hiked like 17, 20 miles that day with like ropes and stuff. And it was like a humongous day of work.
Wow.
And then like Jared's like, hey, can you come shoot me on this thing like tomorrow? And I was like,
God.
oh my gosh, yeah, okay. And I was kind of like, I just like, all right, you just got to pull it together to go make this happen, right? Because like, this is a big opportunity, shoot with an Oscar award winning actor. Yeah, and so we went and shot on this cliff called the Rostrum that Jared wanted to try, and my friend Chris was guiding him, and yeah, he just wanted some documentation, and my friend Priscilla and I both went and shot that day, and yeah, it was awesome. And then he just, all of a sudden, he liked having me around, or there's like, we got along, and like, he just kind of kept hitting me up.
So you've been doing...
And it was like...
You've been doing personal, this was personal, right? For his own record keeping, and you've just been shooting that personal stuff for him, or?
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as he can say.
Exciting answer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, just personal. I'm not sure though, but yeah, I've just gone and documented stuff with him, and, totally get along with him. He's a good dude, and yeah, he'll hit me up. So whenever he's in the valley, and like, I'll just sometimes just get a text, and yeah, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm psyched. So.
How's his climbing though? Is it as good as his acting, or
is he just clowning around up there?
No, he's actually incredibly strong for like the amount he climbs. He was like, yeah, I've only climbed once a week. Like maybe, like he's like, I've like climbed a couple times this month, and then we take, he gets taken on the rostrum, which is like a really hard Yosemite climb. Like for someone who is climbing once a month, and he like did well. Like
wow,
he was
good.
like cruising, and he was top rope and stuff, and which is totally fine. But like like he's killing it. I was really impressed. I was like, okay, this guy's fit. And
so you obviously, you shot some stuff for Real Rock too. Like you've just been kind of man for hire in the Valley, right, for a while.
Yeah, I shot for Real Rock 15, which came out a few years ago now. With Lonnie Kauk, I was shooting him on Magic Line,
Yeah,
which was pretty cool, and which is like a really hard route in the Valley next to this waterfall. And Lonnie Kauk he like grew up in the Valley, and his dad Ron's a local, and I'd see Ron all the time.
yeah,
Ron's a friend, and so yeah, it was cool shooting that, and
yeah.
work with Real Rock. And Brett Lowell, I got to work with Brett Lowell, who's a really talented cinematographer.
You being kind of this like niche expert, being able to film while hanging from high up. Have there been ever any close calls or any incidents? Because I mean, you're doing regularly stuff that's like high stress. You're tired. You're hiking long distances. You're trying to get the shot. Have there ever anything crazy ever happen? Any close calls?
Yeah, I've had a scary incident before. I was filming a lot, or shooting a lot at this point, and then I was shooting. This is when I was shooting on Golden Gate with my friend Jordan Cannon. And Golden Gate is a route on El Capitan. It's like one of the variations of the Salothe or Free Rider, which Alex soloed, but it's completely different for most of the climb. But anyway, yeah, so I was rappelling down to go meet up with Jordan, and he told me that, hey, there's already lines fixed, like ropes fixed to get down. And I kind of, somewhat blindly trusted the ropes going down there. And this is a super huge and hard lesson I had to learn somewhat early on. Was rappelling down, met up with Jordan, and it's kind of like these big rappels. There's like this big like space rappel, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to jug this out later. Mm-hmm. And I was like worried, and it's sharp up there. It's like really sharp on this certain part of the mountain. And so I was a little nervous, like, cause like there's ropes on like going over edges. But as I was rappelling, they, like whoever set the ropes, like had rope protectors on the ropes, and I would just adjust them as I was like rappelling down and put it back into place and all that stuff. And, it ended up being a really big day, and like Jordan was climbing into the night, and I didn't think it was gonna be that big of a day. So I didn't even have a headlamp with me.
Oh no.
And it was like, oh yeah. It was Halloween night, and there was a full moon. So then I started jugging out like by full moonlight. It was not going my way, but I could see pretty well. Yeah, it was not ideal not having a headlamp, forgetting the headlamp, like, cause I forgot in the bag up on the summit. And when I rappelled in, like, totally forgot it. And I was jugging out, and there was like, the first rope was like a really long ascent, and I'm like in space. And I noticed the rope at this point, like, wasn't fully static. And usually when you're jugging, you want like a really static rope, which means like, you just don't want it to bounce or move that much. Mm-hmm. Because like if it's bouncing, then that's like more rubbing on the rock, more friction, and that can, eventually, if it's on an edge, that's like going back and forth, like cutting your rope. And there's a rope protector on it, but it was like a 90-meter jug. It was pretty huge. So that's like, almost 300 feet of like jugging. And I was like, oh, this is not great. And it was a really hard jug, and I was getting up to this basically where the edge was on, and I just, it's moonlight, and I see the rope started changing colors. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And I get up to it, and basically the sheath of the rope is gone in this one part, and it's just the core of the rope, the inside. The color you don't want to see is like the white threads of the inside of the rope, because the sheath has like the rope protector, because I was bouncing so much on this rope, and like I'm not a small dude, I'm a big guy. So like I was kind of bouncing somewhat, and the rope protector like moved because it wasn't a fully static rope. And basically like the edge that this rope was on was like just like cutting like a saw. Wow. Like it was on a saw.
And how high up are you at this point?
Like
too high to count.
2,600 feet off the ground.
Wow.
Something like that, 2,700 feet off the ground. And I get up to it, and I see the situation immediately, but I'm right next to the anchor. So like the end of this is right there. And, I saw it, and I just started, I was about to shit my pants.
Oh my God.
And, I get up to it, and I put weight on the rope again, and the sheath of the rope, I could feel it wanting to start sliding down the core. So it could slide, and you can go with it, if you know what I mean. It's kind of hard to explain. But so I could start sliding down the rope and like go back down, and I could feel it starting to want to slide. And I was immediately like went in panic mode. And then there's a crack right there, and I just get into the crack, and I actually climb up like just a few feet, and I grab onto this chain anchor, and just like luckily get like my my PAS, like just like a sling on me in, and I'm like in the anchor, and then just get all my gear onto this anchor. And I was just like, like just so scared. I was like terrified. And if there's a core shot like that, you can tie it off. And I was the first person to jug this. So I tied it off, like basically tied this like giant like alpine butterfly knot, essentially tied off so my friends can jug it behind me. But I like said something to my friend Jordan, Mark, who were coming down below, and I was like, hey guys, just letting you know there's a really big core shot in this rope. And Mark has been climbing on El Cap for, at this point, like 40 to 50 years. He's like in his 60s. And, you know, he's put up first cents all over Yosemite. He's like a living legend. And so, you know, Mark told me after the fact, he's like, Max, it's just a core shot. Come on. Like, you know, like that's what he was thinking in his head. He's like, why are you saying anything? Like, it's just a core shot. And so I waited for him because I was just kind of freaked out and I just need to like calm down. And then Mark starts jugging up and like he gets up to me and he's like, wait. And he saw the knot and like how bad the core shot was. He's like, did you jug on this? And I was like, yep. And he was like, dude, I would have shit my pants. and like hearing that from Mark, like made me really realize like the gravity of like the situation of just what I just got out of essentially. Damn. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, basically like said to me later, he's like, yeah, no, that was like legit. Like, he's like, there was reason to be afraid and scared.
Yeah.
And it was Halloween night. And so I got to the summit and I was like, that was the scariest Halloween ever.
Yeah. I think I'm done.
I was like, that was actually a horrifying Halloween.
Oh my God.
The first one.
And, yeah. And, you know, I was like totally fine, all good. And Jordan didn't send the route that evening, but we all topped out. And then I ended up going back. And so it was just crazy, like going the second time, like how much easier it was. And then I just learned so much within just like one day of being up there. So it's kind of just like, yeah, learn those big lessons early on. And then, yeah, it's like almost like, oh, you're never going to do it again, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope so as well. I want to see more stuff from you.
Totally. I want to hang out.
Yeah.
Perhaps to kind of go that direction, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the film you just made and kind of what's happening with that. I know you're screening in some rock gyms or have been screening in some rock gyms, and you know, maybe talk about that process and kind of, because this is your newest project, and kind of where you're taking that and what has come from that.
Yeah, my newest film, Legacy on the Muir, just came out, I guess, in February online. But then I was in some film festivals in Europe. I was just in the Wasatch Mountain Film Festival in Salt Lake City. So yeah, I did the film festival circuit a little bit, then went and showed it at gyms.
Which is the classic way to show movies. Which is the classic way to show rock climbing related movies, like back in the day. At rock gyms. Yeah.
Oh, it was so fun. And yeah, I got to go and show. The first showing I did was at my home gym in Concord, like where I first started rock climbing. And so like, you know, all these people like who inspired me and like taught me to climb, like kind of got to see like what I made out of what they taught me. So that was like super cool, like right off the bat. Like,
that's great.
Like, and it was a big party basically.
Yeah.
The little premiere there. And then, yeah, I went and actually showed it at Smith Rock.
Oh, cool.
Because they have like that event called the Kragan Classic at Smith Rock that the American Alpine Club puts on. Yeah, and I didn't get to go to some of the film festivals, unfortunately, because they showed one in New Zealand. I was like, oh, I want to go to New Zealand, but it was kind of still COVID times. I couldn't make it out there. And but yeah, it was funny. I couldn't really afford it either. But then I was telling Alex Honnold about it, and Alex was like so sweet. He was like, He's like, I think I have points. Like, I could like send you out, like fly you out on points. Like, let me see how much this would cost. And I was like, dude, that is so sweet of you, but you don't need to like use your points to send me to New Zealand for the film. And he's like, no, it's a big deal. And yeah, that was like really like a sweet moment. Yeah, that film, let's kind of go back. I guess when I moved to Yosemite right before the pandemic, it was kind of a perfect time. But when I was there, I like wanted to make a film, and it kind of worked out in a lot of ways because at that time it was the pandemic. There weren't a lot of people around. And then also there was this like lawsuit with like film permitting. So you technically didn't need like to pay for a film permit.
Wow.
So like you didn't need all this budget because it's usually expensive to like shoot on LCAP and get a film permit. But like you could just like apply for one and talk to the office and they gave it to you. And it only lasted for a few years. And now it's gone back to normal. I guess whatever the lawsuit happened, it was like overturned or it just went back to normal. But anyway, so it was just, I was living up in Yosemite West, this neighborhood up there, Yana, because, you came and stayed with me for a few days. That was great. Mm-hmm. And I had a neighbor up there, and his name is Tom Herbert. And I met Tom while I was living up there. And I knew Tom Herbert because he put up a lot of first ascents. And, he was a pro climber back in the 80s. And like he was somewhat famous back then. And like his dad was named T.M. Herbert. And in the 60s, his dad was now his dad, in my opinion, is like really well known. He's like a living legend. Put up first ascents on El Cap with Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, and like did a bunch of stuff with Yvon Chouinard. And like Yvon Chouinard was like one of my climbing heroes. And yeah, he was in that movie 100 Degrees South. So he's like in the first climbing film I ever saw. Like he's one of the main guys in it. And yeah, full circle. And so, yeah, Tom was telling me like, I want to go climb this route, the Muir wall. And he's like, it was my dad's route. Yeah, Tom never been able to do the route. And he's like in his, at this point when I was filming him, he was 51 years old. And his dad, unfortunately, right now has Alzheimer's disease and form of dementia. And so he's kind of forgetting a lot of things. But Tom is like, I want to do this route. And like, I want to be able to tell my dad while, he can still, understand and like what's going on and what happened. And Tom did it with these guys, Brandon and Roger, and it was the three of them. And then, he got to go do a speed ascent on his dad's route.
Wow.
And so that was like, then I decided like, that's going to be a cool story. And I made that into a film and then actually had Yvon Chouinard part of it. And then Patagonia ended up helping out and being a sponsor for it.
That's a beautiful story of like kind of keeping that memory and having that connection with his father, like having that relationship, like talk about full circle. It has a lot of really beautiful like human relationships involved in going up a hill.
And preserving with the dementia, that whole angle, preserving the story and getting that in while it's still possible. It's sweet.
Yeah.
Where can people see it, Max?
Yeah, YouTube right now. You can just search Legacy on the Muir on YouTube. It's free.
Cool. We'll have it in our description too. We'll have it in our bio if you want to take a look-see.
Ask the 5-year question.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. This is a two-parter. The first one being, where would you want yourself being in 5 years? Where do you see yourself going in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think in the next 5 years, I would like to, be part of like bigger climbing productions and in climbing in the outdoor world, but also like kind of exploring other sides of just documentary filmmaking and making documentary films that aren't just climbing or like stories about humans within maybe the outdoor realm. So I would like to, make more films about just other human beings and definitely stick in the documentary path and maybe eventually go to like making some films in the narrative path. We'll see. Like,
yeah,
I guess, but mainly, yeah, I think just like working on bigger productions, feeling like, I get steady work and I'm not like having to worry about money all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know when you find that.
Yeah,
we're all looking.
Yeah, are you guys all in the same place?
It goes up and down. Right now it's down.
Yeah. It's just like, Yeah, I mean, I think everyone it's down right now. Yeah, just doing like freelance. It's hard, like project to project, but yeah, it's definitely the best I've ever been right now. And I actually have like funny enough, I have a big commercial gig coming up for like 6 weeks, so that'll be super nice. It's not like climbing related at all. It's like a corporate gig in Silicon Valley, so that'll be fun to do something completely different. I guess in 5 years, just like. Yeah, I just want to still be like learning and doing more stuff within filmmaking.
Yeah.
That's great. A good mindset to keep that learning and always growing in the process.
And the attached question is, if we're looking at this podcast like a time capsule, capturing what's happening with your life right now, if you had a message for yourself in 10 years, this is your chance to record it, and we're going to send it to you in 10 years. So,
all right. Because April 26, 2023. So this will be April 26, 2033. Okay. So it's like leave a message for myself. Just kind of look back and kind of remember this time, I think, as being like a really fun part of your life. And even though this, like, at times it does feel scary and hard and, not always certain that it's going to work out. Like, you definitely have like those uncertainties and the imposter syndrome, but at the same time, this has like been really, really fun. And just like, like building a career from the ground up. It's like, I think 10 years, I hope I can look back on these times and just be like happy with, just the process of it all and learning to like really work hard and just go for, plunge into something that you love and learn how to commit. Yeah. And just enjoy the process.
All right.
Yeah. Well, any final thoughts, Max?
Oh man. What I've learned so far within I haven't been in this industry. I guess I've been doing this for almost 5 years now, really. Within the 5 years I've been doing this, I'm still pretty new. I guess like I have the one big lesson I've learned is, it's definitely worth it to jump in the deep end and go for the plunge and work really hard. I some days like I'm like, oh man, like I wish like I, can make some more money, or like it was a little more steady, or things felt a little more easy. Like some days you kind of do wish you had some more stability, I guess. That's definitely something you sacrifice in this industry, the stability. But then I think about that at the same time, like there's things I've learned that I wouldn't regret. And I feel like for anybody, you should just go for it and put your all. And if it works out, amazing. If it, doesn't, at least you tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for being on it. I also think it's really cool that you were able to find a way to like merge your two biggest hobbies. I think that's rare. I love climbing. It's one of my biggest hobbies,
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's been pretty fun for sure. I've been enjoying the ride. The cool thing about what I do as well is, it's hard. Like some days it's like blue collar, hard physical work, like physical labor. And you're just like, oh man, like you burned like 3,000 calories, like just doing your job.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, it feels great. I do love like those big days. But then when you get hired to do like other camera op work, like sometimes I'll just get hired for something like in Silicon Valley or something, because I live close, and it's all of a sudden like that job is so much easier in comparison. It's like, oh, like you've already done the hard stuff. Like that stuff's so much harder, and you already do that like a lot.
Yeah,
so
you're
now
like at a corporate
else
gig
feels like a
with
lot easier.
your bag of ropes, like ready to ascend a wall.
The hike is from the car to the office, 0.3 miles. You're like, oh,
This is great.
Right. It's like all of a sudden I was like, shooting this thing, and I was like doing I was shooting this like live thing happening, and they're like, hey, do you need like a coffee? Do you need a sandwich? Like, PAs bring me a sandwich. And I'm like, oh my God. this is incredible. Like I felt like a king. They even like brought us out like director's chairs at one point to shoot. Because we like had the big like Panasonics on tripods, and they're like, "Here's like a director's chair." I was like, "Oh my god, this feels like so luxurious."
You don't have to poop in bags.
Yeah, I definitely done that during shoots on El Cap. Like,
Wow.
a lot.
And we were actually auctioning off those bags. So we're going to do a raffle for a good cause. If you want one of...
It's all going to charity.
Yeah.
Our cause.
All going to charity, thank God, yeah. Yeah, that is the nice thing about doing the climbing cinematography. Kind of teaches you to work hard, like, and then everything else seems a little easier. I guess like it's just different because you don't always deal with like LED lighting and that sort of deal all the time. So that's when things get hard, is like the